Welcome to everyone. This is a series of educational videos about essential oils and aromatherapy that explores the basic question of what is inside the bottle. I like that question because it gives us the opportunity to really understand holistically what is an essential oil. And by implication of that, it also leads us into the bigger field of study of medicinal plants, botany, and because of that, we can start to explore ecophysiology, or the influence of the elements of nature on the plant and its production of the essential oils. From there, we can tie it into cosmological principles of classical medical systems such as Ayurveda and Chinese medicine. And we can also see that there's a lot of information in here about distillation and about alchemy, history and culture and chemistry. There's so many things that we can talk about if we just ask that basic question. One of the most important topics to start with as we ask the question, what's in the bottle, is the fact that an essential oil is a very concentrated substance. This means two different things. First, it means that an essential oil has a lot of therapeutic power if we use it correctly. But it also means that it has more potential for creating side effects if we don't use it correctly. Now, the way that we can imagine or visualize this concentration level is to imagine a pyramid, and this pyramid represents two things that are directly related. The first is the concentration level of the substance as it is extracted from the plant, and the second is the biocompatibility level that that substance has with the human body. These two things are directly related because as the concentration level of an extract goes up, its biocompatibility actually goes down. So let's look at what this means on a practical level. At the foundation of this pyramid, we can imagine using something like a fresh ginger root, slicing it up and making tea with it, or making some fresh peppermint tea. In that particular form, a simple water extract, what we are getting is a very low concentration of aromatic volatile molecules, or the essential oil. And when we drink that tea, we're actually getting the flavor, the fragrance, the aromatic benefit, the therapeutic benefit of the aromatic plant, but in a very, very low concentration level. Now, if we go up the pyramid of concentration, what we would come to next is an alcohol extract of making a tincture. And when we look at the dose level of taking a tincture internally, what we see is that we take a lot less. So typically we can easily drink several cups of ginger tea or peppermint tea during the day, but we certainly cannot drink cups of tincture. The dosage becomes reduced to maybe 1 dropper, 2 droppers, 2 or 3 times a day at the most. So if we go all the way up to the top of the pyramid, we arrive at the essential oils. And the essential oils are a pure family of compounds that are extracted generally through steam distillation. And they are in the most concentrated form. They have no other constituents from the plants mixed in with them. They are just this family of aromatic molecules that have been distilled and are in the most concentrated form. So therefore, what we're talking about in terms of where essential oils can be placed in a scheme of concentration and biocompatibility is that they are actually the most concentrated form of the plant, which makes it the least biocompatible. If we stop and think about it for a minute, we can realize that this pyramid scheme of concentration actually represents something else, and that is the level of knowledge that we need in order to use medicinal plants carefully. What that means is that the plants that are at the foundation of this pyramid are generally going to be very biocompatible. These are the foods that we eat. These are the simple spices that we put in the foods. These are the simple medicinal teas that we take that have a very low concentration of active ingredients and so forth. But as we move up the pyramid, it means that we also need to have a higher level of knowledge, training, sensitivity, and understanding so that we use these more concentrated substances carefully. So one of the basic ways then that we can understand aromatherapy is that we are taking a large amount of plant material and we're concentrating it through an extracting or a distilling process, and we're ending up with a very small amount of the active constituents. Aromatherapy is basically the process of diluting everything back down so that it becomes biocompatible again. So this is a very simple way to understand it. We concentrate a lot of plant material together, and it's not very biocompatible. But then we use all these different methods of diluting the essential oil and making it biocompatible again. That's really all there is to aromatherapy. Essential oils have a kind of paradoxical nature. On the one hand, because they are so concentrated, we could say that they represent a pharmaceutical level of using medicinal plants. What I mean by that is that for medicinal purposes, one drop is sufficient to create a huge impact physiologically in the body. On the other hand, because aromatherapy is something that can be easily applied and used by everybody, it's actually not pharmaceutical. It's really more like grassroots healthcare or folk medicine. But there's a lot of confusion about these two ways of using essential oils that I would like to address here for a moment. Because on the one hand, if we are using essential oils in a dilute form, then they become safe. They become easily applicable. They become widely usable by everybody for all kinds of things. And when I'm talking about diluted form, it's simple things that probably everybody watching this already knows about. Putting essential oils in a diffuser. That's a way of taking a concentrated substance and diffusing it into a more biocompatible, less concentrated form that isn't going to create any kind of problems. If we're talking about adding essential oils to a massage oil, we're talking about bringing the concentration level way down so that it is safe for direct application to the skin. So if the essential oils are diluted correctly, then basically they become applicable for practically everybody for all kinds of therapeutic benefits. But on the other hand, if we are using essential oils in an undiluted form, whether that is putting them directly on the skin or especially taking them internally, then what that means is that we're using medicinal plants at the highest level of concentration. And that means that we have to have the highest level of training and knowledge and understanding. And the confusion arises when people try to do things with essential oils that they're not actually trained to do. So this is why Floracopeia always has said, don't use essential oils undiluted on the skin, don't take them internally. That doesn't mean that you cannot ever use essential oils on your skin or that you cannot ever take them internally. It means that we have to understand that there are two kinds of uses of essential oils. There's two basic ways of using aromatherapy. And so let's define it a little bit. Let's give it some terminology, and let's just say that there is the home pharmacy, folk medicine, grassroots healthcare level of using essential oils, and then there is the medical use of essential oils. And unfortunately, the lines between these two types of practices or using essential oils has become very blurred. And so what we would like to do is define these very clearly and say, if you are going to administer an essential oil internally, undiluted, to yourself or someone else, that is giving somebody a highly concentrated form of a medicinal plant. And because it's so high on the concentration level, it means that you should also have the appropriate training of the proper dose and the proper time and the proper diagnosis for the proper condition and when not to do it. And basically what that means is that you must have the ability and the license and the knowledge to diagnose a person. And that's practicing medicine. So for now, let's leave aside the clinical use of essential oils and let's concentrate on what we could call the folk medicine or the home pharmacy side of aromatherapy. And this is actually a huge field of using essential oils very safely and effectively, because we don't actually have to have a high level of knowledge about how to use the essential oils to get a huge amount of benefit from them. And that's the beauty of using them. And no matter how we decide to use essential oils or what form of aromatherapy we would like to practice, we need to have a basic understanding of the differences between species of oils. A lavender oil, for example, is very different than a frankincense oil, which is very different than an oil from the spices such as cinnamon. And how many species of oils are there? One of the ways that I have found very helpful for accomplishing this is to use the language and the concepts and the principles of Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine. These classical medical systems give us a cosmology that allows us to easily understand the effects of all kinds of things, of our diet, the different foods that we eat, the effects of the medicinal plants that we might use, or the therapies that we could apply. So we can take these principles and we can also use them to understand what is inside the bottle. The most basic principle of both diagnosis and treatment that is found in Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine is a polarity of hot and cold. Now this sounds very simplistic, but it's actually quite profound and complex when you start to unpack it, because hot means conditions of overstimulation and inflammation, and cold means conditions of deficient energy and hypofunctioning. The treatment principle for these two conditions is basically simple, which is to apply the opposite. Therefore, for conditions of heat, diet, medicinal plants, or therapies that have a cooling, relaxing, calming, anti-inflammatory effect are applied. And for conditions of coldness or hypofunctioning or deficiency of energy and vitality, treatments that are warming and stimulating and energizing are given. Now this gives us the first opportunity then to classify essential oils according to Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine into two broad categories of those oils that are basically heating and stimulating, and those oils that are basically cooling and relaxing. There are two words that I like to use from Ayurvedic medicine that beautifully describe this polarity of heating and cooling, and those are Agni and Soma. Agni refers to the sunlight, which is said to be heating and drying, and Soma refers to moonlight, which is said to be cooling and moistening. Now, if we look at those two principles, it gives us a wonderful way of understanding what's in the bottle, because if we go back to the origin of the heating and cooling principles in the oil, what we see is that they actually came from the sun and the moon. Now, the sun and the moon are the two most basic celestial influences that act on the plants. The sunlight, of course, is responsible for all of the photosynthetic processes within plants, but the moon also plays a very interesting, more subtle role in the growth and the maturation and the flowering and the production of various compounds, such as essential oils, within the plant world. What we can see then is, if we classify the oils into these two broad categories of heating and cooling, that we're actually talking about oils that are rich in sunlight or oils that are rich in moonlight, and we are using these influences to affect different kinds of changes in the human body. So what does this mean on a practical level? The most important thing that we are always concerned with in using essential oils is safety. And so therefore, it's fairly easy to comprehend that the oils that are really rich in sunlight and Agni and have a stimulant hot effect on the body are those that are going to be the most problematic in terms of causing dermotoxicity or inflammatory reactions on the skin, and also the ones that are going to be the most dangerous for taking even one drop directly on the tongue. They will burn. And it's the influence of that Agni and that concentrated sunlight within the oil that is actually causing that inflammatory response in the body. On the other hand, oils that are rich in Soma, moonlight, and have this cooling, relaxing quality are going to be much less problematic in terms of therapeutic application. So what are the best examples of oils that are rich in Agni or heating influences and Soma or cooling influences? There are two groups of oils that I think represent the Agni oils very nicely. The first is the spices. This is relatively easy to understand intuitively because we have an experience when we consume a spice that it actually causes a heating, stimulating effect in the body. And so therefore, it's easy to understand that if we are going to extract the active constituents, the essential oils of the spice, that it's actually going to become increasingly hot and intense for any kind of application in aromatherapy. So the spice oils include things like cinnamon and clove and ginger and so forth that come from the tropics, places like South India. And they also include things from the Mediterranean, like oregano and thyme and most of the members of the Lamiaceae family. Now, all of these oils have the potential to cause a dermotoxic reaction on the skin or to cause irritation and inflammation inside the mouth and the GI tract if taken internally. So that's why I classify them as being heating and full of Agni. The second category of oils that I think is very important to understand in terms of Agni are the citrus oils. Now, the citrus oils are somewhat deceptive because we would not necessarily think that they're actually heating, because the citrus fruit itself is so full of the water element and it's cooling when we take it. But the citrus oils have a very powerful effect if they are applied to the skin, which is that they are phototoxic. They have a relationship with the sunlight, and what happens is that they increase the amount of ultraviolet rays that are absorbed into the skin. And they're deceptive because they can be applied to the skin and nothing happens. You don't get a burning effect like if you put cinnamon oil on a sensitive part of the body, for example. You can put the citrus oils on the skin and it feels fine, but if you go out in the sunlight over a period of time, you can actually develop very, very serious burns as a result of absorption of the ultraviolet rays. So these are two groups of oils that I think are very important to understand in terms of their relationship with Agni, or sunlight, and the potential to cause inflammation in the body. So what are the oils that are rich in Soma, or moonlight, and have a lot of cooling effects? I think the best example is quite simple. It's the flowers. Because if we look at the therapeutic application of the flowers, what we see is that they have the opposite of the spice oils, and that is that they are used for treating inflammation and treating conditions of heat, that they have generally a shared therapeutic function of being calming and relaxing, which is also a kind of cooling effect, and also having significant anti-inflammatory effects for a wide range of conditions. And so therefore we can say that the flower oils are really the best representatives, or the vehicles, or the agents of moonlight. So now we have a basic understanding of how we can classify essential oils into two broad categories according to Ayurvedic medicine. Those that transmit a lot of Agni, or sunlight, and those that transmit Soma, or cooling moonlight influences. We can also see that this corresponds directly with some of the ideas in Chinese medicine, and we can see that the heating oils are actually those that are very rich in yang stimulant effects, whereas the cooling oils are more yin by nature. Now, what relevance does this have at this particular level of practicing aromatherapy? What it means, very simply, is that the heating oils are more difficult to work with. There are more safety concerns. There are more potential side effects because they can cause different kinds of reactions. And so at this point, what we can say is that the safest oils to use at the beginning are going to be those that are rich in Soma and moonlight. They're yin types of oils that are basically in the category of the flowers. And that includes all of your favorite flowers. It includes the lavender and the rose and the neroli and the ylang ylang and so forth. There's a very large number of oils that are in this group. And these are basically the safest oils to use, in my opinion. And I think that that's a widely shared opinion also. So now we've touched on some of the most basic answers to the question of what is in the bottle. I think you can see that this kind of inquiry gives us a great opportunity to understand practical things about essential oils so that we can use them safely. But it also gives us an opportunity to start appreciating everything that is in the bottle and how these interconnected influences in nature all end up here. And it also gives us the opportunity as we go along to understand some of the principles of Chinese and Ayurvedic medicine. So we're going to continue unpacking this in our next section. So I hope that you'll join us. And in the meantime, if you'd like to add a comment down below, I would be most interested in hearing from you. So thank you.